Okay, good morning, everyone. And
Good morning.
how are you?
Fine.
Good, good. I'm Marcia Hovey. I'm the Executive Director of Cadre, and I want to welcome you all to our presentation today on the dirty work after disasters, the cleanup, and some of the heroes that are going to present to you today that are willing to roll their sleeves up and get that work done. And I think that after you hear them, it might inspire you to either want to work with them or start your own local presentation or your local project so that you can help others in all different disasters, big and small. And let me go ahead. If you could put your name and your organization name in the chat. We are using Otter AI and Zoom captioning, so that should be active right now. If you want to use it, just raise your hand if it's not working for you, and we'll stop and make sure that we can get that fixed. You can ask questions anytime. If you want to put them in the chat while a presenter is speaking, then we can ask it right after. And then I'm going to put in the chat reference materials. The Cadre website already has the PowerPoint and several of the reference materials that we're going to be using today, and we'll add on to that. Awesome. Okay. Our commercial before we start, because we get grant money to tell you about our resources. We use the MyShake. We encourage everyone to download the MyShake app. It is an free app on your phone. It was developed by USGS and UC Berkeley and a cast of thousands that is now adopted by the state of California and Washington and Oregon. If you download it, it will give you a pre-alert before an earthquake of 4.5 or higher occurs in your proximity. And it depends on how far from the epicenter you are, whether or not you can actually, if you're going to have 5 seconds of warning or if you're going to have a minute of warning. But it does give you that opportunity to not be taken by surprise by the earthquake and take any protective measures you might need to, like stepping off the ladder or getting down off the roof before it starts. And in addition to that, on our website at cadresv.org/earthquake, there are presentations in multiple languages called When Seconds Count: Earthquake Safety in the Home that you can watch so that you can and share with people, because it is in multiple languages, so that we can make sure everybody's prepared. We're also promoting wildfire air quality. On our preparedness website, we have an air quality section. It's a one-stop shop for anything. If you're checking out air quality, instead of having to go search all of the different sites, you can click on everything here. It includes our local folks that have great information on wildfire air quality. In addition, there's information for schools. There's even how to build your own air filter that you can have at home in case you are in the smoke and you can't get out of it. And in addition to that, we've done a whole series of mini videos on wildfire safety. So you can find those in 7 languages on our website as well.
And all of that is free. You don't have to be a member to get into that. It's all free.
Oh yeah, it's all free. Thank you, Cindy. And Cindy Stewart, our operations manager, is on the call. Let me see who other staff members are here.
Luna is here.
Luna Mohammed, one of our emergency managers, is here currently doing training and leading our new food support network. And Jennifer Campbell, I don't know if she's on screen yet, but she was just brought on to be our disaster recovery specialist, and she will be hosting the Zoom meeting that we do tomorrow on disaster or community recovery. Okay, the objectives: provide an overview of the challenges and requirements of debris management for both government and the community, learn about the capabilities of our local partners, identify opportunities to collaborate. This is a list of the presenters for today. The Red Cross, Cal Recycle, Catholic Charities, Crisis Cleanup, Team Rubicon, and Tzu Chi Foundation. They're not going to go in that order. I just wanted to put them in alphabetical order because it looked better. Because Cadre is the VOAD for Santa Clara County, we are connected to all levels of government. We work locally with the local governments and the county operational area. We have a voluntary agency liaison at the county, at the state, and at the federal level. And that means that in a disaster, besides those people that'll be presenting today, we have access to all of these support organizations. And I'll just let you look at that for a second, and hopefully that helps you be relieved that maybe we could get more help, but no, there's more. So because we are part of the national network of VOADs, we can bring people in. And the reason there is such a broad base is that we have more than one disaster going on in the United States at any one time. And so they won't always all be available to us, but some of them will. And maybe we can even develop more local capability. Okay, so I'm gonna let Aaron go first. And do you need to share your screen, Aaron, or?
Yes, yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, let's make him a co-host.
In the meantime, while you guys are doing that, let me just point out that the captions in Zoom can be, this presentation can be captioned in a number of different languages. If you speak Spanish or something else, and you want to caption the bottom, I'd love to hear from you just to find out how accurate it actually is. If you wanted to put the caption on in another language that you speak, certainly try that and let us know how that works out for you. Thank you.
All right, so Aaron Titus is the Executive Director of Crisis Cleanup, which is the one of the leading organizations that organizes cleanup efforts. And so I'm going to let him talk.
Awesome. So you should be able to see my screen and a map with a bunch of dots. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so before we get to like the website and everything else, I tell people often that crisis cleanup is about 10% technology, it's about 40% philosophy, and it's about 50% relationships. And so we're going to really focus our energies at about in that proportion. I'll give you a quick rundown of why we started. So I lived in New Jersey in 2011 time frame, and during that time we had Hurricane Irene came through and turned my basement into an 18-inch indoor swimming pool, and then also really just kind of flooded the area. And so I found myself in charge of disaster relief operations for my church. And we would all gather together. There'd be 1,000 of us in a parking lot, and it would take an hour and a half to get checked in, which is lightning speed for 1,000 people. But that's still, a lot of time to waste for volunteers. That's 1,500 volunteer hours that are wasted in just sitting around. In the meantime, everybody's pulling out their smartphones. They're playing Angry Birds. And the technologist in me is, like screaming inside. Like I could have you all checked in 30 seconds, not an hour and a half. This is dumb. So that's when I started designing systems that would make that process a little bit easier. The following year, we had Hurricane Sandy, and that's when we launched for Hurricane Irene is when we had we had another disaster in the meantime. We had straight line winds, and that's when we launched kind of the alpha version of Crisis Cleanup. Hurricane Sandy rolled around, we broke it back out, rewrote it, open sourced it, and invited about 120 organizations to participate. And the theory is very simple. It's kind of like a Craigslist philosophy. You all know how to do cleanup. You all know how to help your neighbors. what we lack is a way to organize and share information inter-organizationally, in an interagency basis. Crisis Cleanup provides a list of people who need help, and then connects people who need help with volunteers who can help. During disasters, we'll open up a hotline for the public to call. Right now, we have 3 hotlines going on, one for South Carolina, one in Louisiana, and one in Hawaii for the Kauai floods. And volunteers from across the country answer those calls. So, for example, if you're volunteers, you have volunteers who may not be able to do the physical labor, but can answer calls at home. This is a really useful and meaningful service opportunity for them. And it doesn't even have to be in California. It can be in the next major hurricane. When Hurricane Thor arrives and you want to help, you can get on the Crisis Cleanup hotline, for example, and answer those calls. Those requests are then placed on a shared map, which is what you see here, and I'll go over that in a little bit more detail. So as you all know, in the VOAD movement, we have 4 ideals that we harp on all the time. The 4 C's: collaboration, communication, coordination, and cooperation. And I remembered all 4 of them. I usually forget one. The 4 C's, if they came naturally, we would not need an organization devoted full time to their promotion. The 4 C's do not come naturally, but I will tell you a 5th silent C that does come naturally, and that is competition. We are all competitors. We're competing for grants and for mind space and for volunteers. And in the faith community, we're ideological competitors. And I think it's useful to say those things out loud, because sometimes we see some rather baffling behavior that doesn't really help survivors. And we wonder why. Like, well, shouldn't we all just be, in it for the right reasons? Well, competition is a real thing. And I think recognizing it is really important. Now, to that end, the 4 C's are foundational, but they don't actually make disaster relief happen. For that, you need the 4 R's of disaster relief. And those are, in order of importance: first, relationships, resources, roles, and responsibilities. And the order matters a lot. If you implement them backwards, actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second here so we can talk. If you implement them backwards, bad things happen. If you have responsibilities without roles, then you just have confusion. If you have roles without resources, well, then you have impotence. Nothing gets done without resources. And if you have resources without relationships, then you get dysfunction and infighting and backstabbing and all that fun stuff that we all know. Everybody goes crazy once the checkbooks arrives, right? So just like when you're selling a house, the 3 most important principles are location, location, location. In communities generally, and certainly in disaster relief, the 3 most important principles are relationships, relationships, relationships. Strong relationships will pull you together towards a space of collaboration and overcome those otherwise competitive behaviors and inclinations that all of our organizations have. So let's talk about now, we'll move into disaster relief. Disaster relief, as we all know, are in phases. And there are lots of versions of the phases, but you'll have the warning and impact and early response. And once as VOADs, we're typically second responders. Now, there's some of our organizations like the American Red Cross or the Salvation Army do tend to activate during the response phase as well. But we tend to operate, VOADs generally tend to operate in the late response, early recovery, long-term recovery phases. There are exceptions, of course. For the cleanup phase, the first thing we do is damage assessments. The reasons people do damage assessments is because they want money. Federal government gives money through the Stafford Act to states, who then will give it to counties. And counties basically have to prove that it was a disaster and they're overwhelmed and they cannot internalize all that cost themselves. And so that's why they do damage assessments. Damage assessments are useful for situational awareness, but they're not usually actionable. You have so then we move into the cleanup phase. And for that, you need a little bit more information about need. So damage assessment is going to be a location, a type of damage, and a severity, whereas a crisis cleanup intake will focus on what the total needs are. And this is important because it needs to be actionable for our partners like Team Rubicon who are on. They need to know not just what the damage is, but what the needs are. I'll give you an example. Imagine you have a fire, 2 homes burned to the ground. The damage assessment is identical. Home number 1 has insurance, a faith community, and they're already rebuilding. Home 2, they have no resources, they're elderly, and no community connections at all, right? The needs assessment on those 2 homes are going to be very different. And so that's why we have to collect a little bit more information than just the damage assessment information. Now, having said that, crisis cleanup focuses on property, not people. And here's why. I'm an attorney by trade, privacy attorney, care very, very much about privacy. And my philosophy is if I don't have the information, I can't breach it. So while we do need a name and a phone number and an address to contact the person and get get them working with volunteers, I don't want to know your date of birth. I don't want to know your children's names and sexes and ages. I don't want to know the old lady's how much she makes in rent. Now, all of that is really important for case management, for rebuilding, long-term recovery, but not for the cleanup phase. So we'll have a checkbox, for example, that says, are you over 60? But we don't ask, what's your date of birth? We'll ask, are there children in the home? But we don't ask, what are all of their names and ages and sexes? Right? We don't ask that because we don't need it, because it's not about the property. So we minimize personal information because our goal is to share information as much as we can with vetted relief organizations, and our ability to share is inversely proportional to the sensitivity of the data. So the more sensitive it is, the less we can share. So in order to get access to crisis cleanup, and I will reshare my screen now. Screen 1, it's usually screen 2. To get access, you go to crisiscleanup.org, and this is what it will look like. And you click the register button if you don't have an account. And you'll register, you'll choose the disaster. The most recent one is the York County, South Carolina macroburst, for example, but we'll show you here like the San Diego County floods and so on. You'll fill that information out here. We will call you and get you access. Now, to participate, so we don't accept individuals because I can't vet individuals. So an organization has to have a physical presence in the area, do work of this type, and interact directly with survivors and be reputable. And we define reputability as a member of VOAD or government agency, or if you come recommended by a VOAD or a government agency, or if you have a track record of good work. So if you're the local St. Mary's Church, you've never heard of VOAD before in your life, and you hope to never hear about it again, but you're at ground zero, and you know who needs help. You have a list of 200 people who needs help. I want St. Mary's Church in crisis cleanup so they can put the request in so that the Southern Baptists can go out and help. If you are a for-profit company, we have an additional requirement, and that is you cannot have a pecuniary interest in the disaster relief. What that means is no contractors. No contractors, no insurance adjusters. However, if you're Comcast and you're sponsoring your employees to volunteer and go out and do cleanup, great, yeah, you're in. You don't have a pecuniary interest in the disaster relief. You just want to help your neighbors. And I know I'm going through this very fast. So please, as we're talking, put questions in the chat, and I'll make sure to answer all of those as we go along here. Once you are in, you'll see a map like this. So this is in San Diego. You'll see lots of different pins. Now the color indicates a status. If it's red, nobody has helped the person. And then the shape indicates the type of help needed. So a boot, for example, is a muck out. So over here, you'll see Barbara's name and email. You'll see notes. Now, every time you add a case to Crisis Cleanup, the survivor will receive a text message and or email with a private link to manage their case. So they can add notes. They can close their own case out if they've been helped. They can upload photos, and I'll show you some of those. And they can confirm their location. So we'll text them once a week and ask them if they still need help. And if they don't need help anymore, the system will close out the case for you. In fact, these light green cases here, these have been closed out by survivors so that you know that you don't need to call them. And so the map becomes 2 degrees self-cleaning and self-updating. So let's say that you are going to help Barbara here. You take a look, maybe you give her a call, go take a look at it. You'll see 1 or more work types down here, muck out and mold remediation. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, make it easier to see there. So let's say that you do muck outs, but you don't do mold remediation. That's fine. You can click the claim button on just the work that you do. So if I click claim here, this icon is going to turn from red to a yellow-orange color. Oh, and by the way, our color scheme for the dots on the map are colorblind friendly for 7 different types of color blindness. And then you can go help this person. And then when you're all done, you come back and change the status to close completed or whatever the right status might be. If it turns out you can't help them, that's fine. Just click the unclaim button and it'll turn back to red and others can claim it. And you can leave the mold remediation for some other organization that might do it. So everybody can see what everybody else is doing. And then, we can minimize duplication of efforts. Up at the top, you'll see a link to download the app. So we have a Crisis Cleanup app on Google and iPhone. Here's the main benefit of this app. It does not require internet access in the field. So what you do is you log in and within data range, it downloads. You go out into the field where there's no cell phone coverage and no data. You can add cases, close cases, upload photos, and do all of that. And then it will phone home and sync back up once it gets back within data range. And that's free. You can download that at any point. Up here in the top left, you'll see multiple views. This is the map view. There's also a table view. And then I think my favorite here is a photo view. So these are photos that survivors have uploaded of the damage. So if you want to get a sense of, what help is needed, and I can come over here and preview some of the damage. Like, okay, I can tell that is about 2 feet, right? You can kind of see the water line right there. You've got some mold growing through the wallboard. It means that all needs to come out. And what that tells me is, thanks for showing me your hats. It is kind of funny what people will show you. Although you can see though, there's mold growing throughout the house. That tells me this is a big job. This is not 5 people for a half hour. I'm gonna need to throw a lot of people for an entire day or more at this. It tells me I got a lot of debris. All that mud is also inside. It means I got a lot of mold, right? Like this tells me far more than any work order is going to. Yeah, isn't this fun? So anyway, that's the photo view as well. And then we also have a scroll view. This is really for mobile. And when you're out in the field and you want to try to find something local and high priority, the scroll view will help you find that. It's kind of an experimental but kind of fun view. I think that is the basics. So I'm going to pause now.
Aaron,
Yes.
can you add one more thing about the SBI slider?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So up at the top, you'll see 2 sliders. This one is the Social Vulnerability Index slider. So if you're familiar with Social Vulnerability Index data, real quick, that's produced by the Center for Disease Prevention, CDP, right? Anyway, CDC. So the CDC produces social vulnerability indexes based upon 15 data points. And what you can do is take this slider and slide it from everyone to the most vulnerable, and it will hide the least vulnerable neighborhoods and help you focus on the neighborhoods with the highest social vulnerability. Now, this is not on a case-by-case basis, right? You can still have somebody who has a lot of need in a rich neighborhood and vice versa. But it can help direct you towards perhaps the neighborhoods that might need the most. The other slider is the freshness slider. So if you want, we've all had the experience of trying to find somebody who still needs help, and it's been 3 weeks and you make like 15 phone calls and nobody's answering or whatever. If you slide here, you can see cases that have been updated recently. And so these are cases that, are more likely to be, engaging and answer the calls and need help right now. All right, now I'll pause for questions, thoughts, concerns, rotten fruit.
There's a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, all right. Do you assess based upon the photos uploaded? No. Well, no and yes. The photos are for you to be able to see and do an assessment. So we don't do it. Again, we're kind of like Craigslist. Craig keeps the servers running, but the community runs Craigslist. You don't chew out Craig if you can't find the couch that you want, right? And so this is your disaster, this is your community, and so you run it. We keep the servers running, and they're for your convenience. Aaron, did you go over who answered the calls on the hotline? Zach, good to see you. So those calls can be answered by any volunteer in their homes. Right now, they're being answered by multiple volunteers across the country at any given time. You do not need to wait for a California disaster if you or your volunteers want to answer calls. Gina Newby, who you heard chime in just there, is the phone volunteer coordinator and will be happy to hear from you. Gina will put her contact information in the chat. Jenny.
Hello. I apologize. My problem is pervasive, but maybe you guys aren't supposed to see me today. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Awesome. Thank you. I actually had the same question in a little bit more detail with regard to the concept of the phones. If a partner doesn't have a cleanup skill set, how can they help? So that leads you to, and I'll ask all my questions because I know, you can just roll right from one to the other. How do you hold hands with long-term recovery? What does that look like? And what happens with the data handoff? And how do you partner with VisionLink?
Great questions. Okay, so if you don't do cleanup but you still want to help, you can answer phones as we've discussed. Reach out to Gina. Gina's contact is in the chat. As Gina pointed out, also in the chat, we cannot take a single unaffiliated volunteers. They have to be associated, and we need you to manage your own volunteers. If you just say, hey, here's 50 people to answer calls, manage them. No, we can't do that. We'll train them. We'll give you all the training you need to. But you still need to manage your own volunteers, especially when Hurricane Thor arrives. Let's see. Next question on relationship with long-term recovery. So after the cleanup phase, then we have that lull between cleanup and long-term recovery, and the long-term recovery group gets formed. And then the first question they ask is, well, what just happened? And FEMA is not so great at sharing information anymore. And so we warmly invite long-term recovery groups to register at Crisis Cleanup as well. They can come in and click the download button. We give them a special level of access that gives them access to all of the client data within their counties or geographic areas, and they can download that information and use that to start their process. You can then also import that into to VisionLink as a part of your case management and long-term recovery. Jenny, did you have one other question? Did I hit them all, or did I forget one?
I think you hit them all. Bear with me a second. Yeah, you talked about the data handoff and then how you hold hands with the long-term recovery, because that's something that we're actually talking tomorrow about long-term recovery with everybody. And I think it's super important that although so many of us deal with response, the need is incredibly important for moving forward through recovery to long-term recovery, and how crisis cleanup empowers that process and expedites it.
And the more I do disaster relief, the more I realize that disaster relief is long-term recovery and everything else is an asterisk. Like everything
Yeah.
else is just minor details. I totally agree. Is it Araceli?
Araceli has a question.
Araceli, yes.
Hi, yes. Actually, I want to come in as a partner on crisis cleanup. What we have been able to do is get our clients on there and then just check in. And then what we also do is with our local VOAD is kind of mention a couple of services that we might need in our county. So right now, my team's working with Monterey County and Santa Clara County. So they provide us access to look at Monterey County and the counties that we're serving based on the clients that we have. Because we are partners with crisis cleanup, we're able to, do it in regards to if we let the clients know they could at any time go in there and pull themselves out of it if they don't want the services. um Part of the case management is being in touch with that client, and then just kind of updating our notes on our end, whether it's Vision Link or ETO or any other program, on putting them on there and just kind of checking in. We also check in with our local VOAD, which is Cadre here in Santa Clara County, and just kind of mention, hey, we're getting a lot of hits for this kind of services. So then as a VOAD here in Santa Clara County, we're able to nudge a lot of our partnerships that already do that kind of work, based on that communication of we're seeing a lot of this request. Because one thing is being a partner agency with your local VOAD is you could actually nudge your VOAD. A lot of clients are looking for this, because if the communication is not open, we don't notify the local VOAD, they can't reach out to their volunteers and tell them, hey, crisis cleanup is looking for this kind of service. So it's really helpful. Thank you, Erin.
Awesome.
Erin,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
this is Cindy. I have a question, but I don't know if it's for you or for Gina, or probably both of you could answer it. When it comes to training volunteers, do you train the volunteers to actually use the system as well? Or do you just train them to take the calls and then pass that information forward to someone that's technically savvy?
So we have training materials on our website. If you go to crisiscleanup.org and click the training button, crisiscleanup.org/training, we have training videos. We have a mandatory training video for everybody, and then additional training for the phone volunteers in particular. The short version is, yes, we let them know how to enter the cases, and then it really is up to the responding organizations then to look at that map and see what they can do.
Thank you.
Jenny, and then I also just want to be aware of the time, and make sure that we give plenty of time to our other presenters as well.
Thank you, and absolutely. As a member of Cadre and working with the specific assignment relative to long-term recovery, I wanted to just link Araceli, because I don't want to assume that everybody understands what recovery to long-term recovery is. And so it's very important that when, Araceli is talking about her great relationship with crisis cleanup, that is phenomenal. That is not the case in many areas across the nation. We don't even have a disaster case management group in LA, for example. We are just so spoiled in Santa Clara County to have Catholic Charities and that vast experience. What's important to highlight is most typically, depending on the size of the disaster case management is going to be partnering with the long-term recovery group. Okay, and that long-term recovery group develops and is also, it's an offshoot of that, the VOAD partners, those VOAD partners that are available with resources to dedicate toward long-term recovery is such a critical component to highlight here. Every disaster is different. Every community is different. There's no cookie cutter, but what you can rely on is that if a long-term recovery group is going to be stood up, the VOAD is going to be working with our other government and non-government partners to establish whether we start up a long-term recovery group. And where that comes in is just another plug for our presentation tomorrow is, how do we do that? Well, you want to have some form of a committee, a collaborative, an organization that is an offshoot of your long-term recovery group. And that's dedicated toward the recovery portion. And that team would then be collaborating with the VOED and everybody else to decide, do we need a long-term recovery group, or can we simply rely on that wonderful goldmine that we have of Catholic Charities for this particular disaster if it's not large enough or declared?
So amen to everything that Jenny just said. Once you've seen one disaster, you've seen that disaster. Yeah, I'm the co-chair of Boulder County VOED in Colorado. And Jenny mentioned that the relationship between VOAD and the long-term recovery, it's often an offshoot, or there's some sort of tertiary relationship there. I'm also the founding chair of our long-term recovery group, and sit on the board now. Fortunately, I was able to pass the chairship off to someone else because that's too much for me. It's long-term recovery is intense. I have the utmost respect and admiration and gratitude for groups like Catholic Charities and case managers generally. Their job is to make bricks without straw on a daily basis, and I'm eternally grateful for them. Araceli.
Yeah, and just to add, first things first, everybody's here, and that's part of being at the next level and getting more information. We have crisis cleanup, but we didn't have it on our first two disasters. And it's just lessons learned. Like anybody that's working in a disaster knows, well, you get better with each disaster. But unfortunately, we always say that. But I mean, we didn't use crisis cleanup on certain disasters, not until, we had to sit down and said, so Gina, tell me exactly what is crisis cleanup and how well will it benefit the work that we're doing, because we are doing a partnership with our Monterey County, and she took the time, she took the great efforts, and then we did our internal Catholic Charities USA conversations with other sites and said, okay, this is something that we do want to sign on to, and we've been able to add a couple clients to there. So doesn't mean you have it right away. It's just takes that time.
And I'll make one more comment, then Marsha, I'll turn it back over to you. So crisis cleanup is going to be useful in disaster. We don't have any size requirements. So if you call me up and say, can we use crisis cleanup? The answer is going to be yes. It doesn't matter how big or small. In general, though, crisis cleanup will be more useful the larger the disaster, the larger the number of organizations that are responding. It has mixed utility after fires. We'll open it up for a fire. We've done lots of fires. However, while there is a lot of need, for example, for ash sifting after fires, not many organizations do that. There's about 2, maybe 3 nationally that do ash sifting as a part of their core competencies. And so there may not be that need for that, multiple hundreds of agencies or dozens of agencies coordination. So the answer will always be yes, but just keep in mind, it may not be incredibly useful for every single disaster, because there may not be a community engagement component for fire cleanup, for example. You just have PPDR comes along and scoops everything up and takes it away, right? All right, so Marsha, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Aaron. That was great information. I'm so glad we recorded it. All right, so let me reshare my screen. Right here. All right, are we back with Aaron again? And now, just speaking of ash and hazardous debris, our next presenter is Amber Lane from Cal Recycle, and I'll just turn it over to her.
You want me to share my screen so I can flip through the slides, or do you want to flip them for
Oh,
me?
I'll flip them.
Okay. My name is Amber Lane. I am an associate safety engineer. And as Aaron just said, PPDR just comes in and sweeps it all up. Well, there's a little more to that story, but that is what we do here at Cal Recycle. And I'll go on to my next slide. I think I was asked to speak a couple days ago, a day or two ago. So the things that Marsha wanted me to speak on was who is Cal Recycle? That's us. Order of engagement. How does it work? How does all of this work, and how does it all come together? And then our future partnerships. Next slide, please. Cal Recycle pretty much has 4 main focuses. We are under the Department of Environmental Protection Agency, so we are subsidiate. We focus on recycling, reducing, reusing, and finding other uses for recyclable material. We educate on hazards of health and safety, environmental impacts, transition to a circular economy, and my favorite, or I don't know if it's my favorite, but my most experienced is disaster recovery. So let's get into disaster recovery while we're all here. So really it starts at the local level, like Aaron said. Thank you for touching on those things. Proclamations is really where it starts. It's the local emergency really starts the aid and the mutual aid and the mission tasking out. As Aaron kind of said, there's kind of a scale of projects. There's the little ones, and then there's the massive extreme ones. And that's most of the time when we come into the picture, when there is federal aid or state aid, CDAA. All of this is contingent on a human health emergency. So an urgency ordinance declared by the local health department, Health and Human Services, depending on what the county has. So it really all starts at the local level in their request. Next page. So it starts with that request. So like I said, the request comes from the county, and it goes to Cal EOC. That is where they declare their damages, the damage assessment, kind of like what Aaron said. The damage assessment is a very good starting point to decide where and how much funding, or what is the extreme of the incident. Those requests automatically start and go through Cal OES, which I worked for 14 years. I see Zach is on here from Cal OES, so hi, Zach. Once that request goes in, the first phase of debris removal is the household hazardous waste, and that's done by DTSC. This is an immediate thing that happens. We call it phase 1. This is where they go in and take care of all the hazardous materials without the homeowner's permission. This is something that the county asks for to mitigate the hazard. So DTSC is the first phase, and go on to the next slide, and we'll go to the second phase. In order for a county to get assistance, whether it be with federal assistance or state assistance, they're still engaged in the process. So it's not like we just come in and take it over and we do all the work. It really is a partnership with the counties, and that's kind of where we're hoping to continue this. Partnerships really are so important, and as someone else said, as we do more and more disasters, we get better and better at this, and we meet more and more people. Keeps going sideways on your screen. So some of the things the county does, they declare the public health emergency, like I said. They work in coordinates with state and local federal agencies. They help us a lot with APNs, or parcel lot lines, and who owns what property. In order for us to come in, the urgency ordinance requires all properties to be cleaned up one way or another. There's actually 3 different ways that they can be cleaned up once we come in. The first is enroll in the state program, the PPDR program. The second is they can do a private program. The county can allow people to clean up their properties on their own with contractors, and pretty much do it to the same specs that we do it to. So get back to a healthy soil surface. There is the third that I don't really ever like to talk about, but that we do abate properties that won't comply with the urgency ordinance. I don't really like to talk about that because I don't hope that we never get to that point. But in order for the urgency ordinance to have any weight, all the properties have to be cleaned up because it's either an emergency or it's not an emergency. Some of the other things the county helps us with is right of entries. So allowing us to go on the property, homeowners have to sign up and provide information on their property. And then we can come in and do our part. Next slide, please. So like I said, PPDR has been around for quite a while. These are the extreme numbers of some of the fires that we have done. I always like to show people how much debris we move and how fast we're able to do it. And unfortunately, we've gotten pretty good at it because there's been quite a few of them. So as you can see, Camp Fire is the biggest one on here. That was a long project, very proud of that project. But if you could think about it, we had 154 crews working at one time up in Butte County. And so the collaboration and the partnership between the federal and the state agencies, OES, CalRecycle, and then other state agencies actually had to come in and help us because it was such a large event. So a lot of coordination and partnerships there. Next slide, please. So I know we like to talk about wildfires in California because that's one of our biggest incidents and they occur more often, but we are also all hazards. So we have elaborated our menu. We're not just in and out anymore with burgers and fries. We do more than just wildfires. We have moved on to floods recently, and we've worked really close with Cal OES including in pickup programs in earthquakes is obviously something we need to have on our radar too. We haven't done those yet, but we're definitely prepared for that. And so we're moving into more of a all hazards type of debris stream coordination. Next slide, please. So like I said, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is normally done by DTSC locally on the larger events in 2020. Some of you, I think even Santa Clara County had the US EPA come out. So there's, sometimes we have to call in the big guns because we need a little help. But as the premier debris removal program in California, we most of the time are able to handle it on a state level. And then phase 2, as you can see on the right, those are the different debris types that we do during phase 2 in the ash and debris category. Next slide, please. So one of the things I was asked to speak about is the human health exposures. Right here we have 3 different exposure paths. Contact, which would be on your skin, ingestion, and inhalation. There's one more, injection, but it doesn't tend to happen too much in these projects, but did want to mention that I do know that there's 4. But really, there is a big human health safety concern out there. And so even if we're keeping our nonprofits safe when we're sifting, or homeowners safe when they're returning, the whole reason we are out there is that there is a human health emergency and we need to mitigate that. And so keeping everyone safe and the messaging and the education is really important to us. Next slide, please. So ash and debris. This is a good picture in the fact that it shows a couple things. In certain phases of our project, we wear full PPE with respirators, air monitoring, and we monitor for all types of things. This concrete, whenever there's concrete and the dust from the concrete, there's silica. And then at the bottom here, we're working with asbestos. So they're bagging asbestos right here to take off the site. Next slide, please. I think I really like this picture. It kind of shows asbestos isn't just in buildings that were built before 1985. They're in everything. So if you just look at all these little dots on here, and I know you're not going to read it all, but asbestos is all through housing materials, and especially housing materials that are not built in the US. Sometimes we get these clearance tiles or these clearance materials from certain places. They don't go through the same protocols as us. So just kind of wanted to throw out there that it's not just in older buildings, it can be in newer buildings too. Next slide, please. Some of the toxic metals found in debris removal is arsenic, copper, chromium, and lead. We test for quite a few of them. CAM 17 is what we call it. But some of the metals that we are concerned about when people are touching or sifting or breathing are those metals right there. Next slide, please. Here's some of the hazardous material that is taken off in phase 1. I don't think people really remember all the things that are in their homes, but propane tanks are a big one, drums, unused cleaners, cleansers, ammunition. As you can see in this middle bottom one, there's a grenade. We find all kinds of things. So really the process that we have established creates a safe environment for debris removal. Next slide, please. We are an environmental agency and we divide debris into categories and we haul them off to landfills or in-use facilities that accept those. So we try to recycle as much as possible, but we also make sure that we are not just dumping everything in a landfill and moving forward onto the next project. We really do our due diligence in sorting. We take metal to metal in-use facilities. We same thing with cars. Ash and debris, we make sure that all the in-use facilities are permitted and allowed to take the debris that we are bringing to them. So that's part of our process, and that's part of the process that the private program takes on, is kind of adopting our in-use and sorting methodology. Next slide, please. So soil sampling, like I said, we test for quite a few heavy metals. I listed them all out here for you. And then, like I said, asbestos is mainly in houses in 1985, but they, as you saw by that graph, that is not always true. And then lead is a big one as well. So some of the things we find in the ash and debris that really, if we could communicate as a partnership together, is that the importance of that there's a safety issue when we're handing out sifters. We really should be wearing proper equipment and educating on the hazard that actually is out there. So next slide, please. Here is our way of soil sampling. Soil sampling is something we do after we clear the entire lot. I know this is a lot of numbers and a lot of science. Some of you will be digging into this and some of you will just look right over it. The one thing I just want to kind of point out to you is that we take background samples from the area. So we know every geological area, every county is different in their background. And we set a goal and based on the background. And so we do this for every project because, as you know, every county, every city is different. And then we set goals, and then we get every property to our goals before we leave. Next slide, please. Some of the personal protective equipment or PPE that you should be wearing, that we should be educating when we're handing out sifters, is the following: a respirator if you can, an N95, gloves, long sleeves, shoe coverings, and safety eyewear. I know this sounds extreme. I know a lot of people just shake their head and say, I want to go find my metals. I want to go find my grandma's urine. I want you to do that too. And I think we all support you in that. And so, like I mentioned earlier, that right of entry is really important. This is where we ask in our program, is there anything that you really want us to look for? Is there anything you want us to save? And I always like telling the story, and I think I told it to Marcia when she asked me to speak. Crew 104 and Campfire, one of many crews, was able to find 3 wedding rings in their process of being out there. And I think finding a wedding ring, and you can imagine the big piles of ash and debris, is amazing. But that was only possible by the right of entry. And so we really want homeowners to be a part of their recovery. And part of doing that is allowing them to tell us what they want to save, what they want to keep. Please stay away from here. My dog's buried over here. Really allowing them to be a part of their recovery we have found to be gratifying to us, but also allowing them to not think that the big bad government is coming in to take all their debris or forcing them to take their debris, but really kind of educating them on the human health safety issues that there are out there. Next slide, please. who pays for all this? That's a great question. I think everyone kind of wonders that. And I know that we've talked about competition and we've talked about this. Once it gets to this level, there really isn't any competition. It's either has been determined to be federally declared, or maybe the state's picking it up as a CDAA level. We don't necessarily always come in unless those two things happened. Either the state is paying for it or the federal government is paying for it. There is one other circumstance where the county can do their own cleanup. They can hire their own contractors and clean up, and we can just provide technical assistance. But in order for us to remove the debris, there needs to be some sort of agreement, whether the state is going to pay for it or the federal government. In regards to insurance, I think everyone's kind of curious, like, do we take all their insurance? No, we do not take all your insurance. On the right of entry, it does ask, do you have insurance? If you don't have insurance, then you don't pay anything. If you do have insurance, the only part of the insurance that needs to be turned over is the one line item that says for debris removal. And the reason for that is we can't allow double dipping. You were given that insurance money to clean up the debris. We can't allow you to keep it based on us coming in and doing it for free. So what we say normally is there's no out-of-pocket cost, and that's based on there's nothing coming out of your pocket based on your insurance. So that's who pays for it. We pay the federal government or the state. Next slide, please.
Amber, before we leave this slide, this is Marcia. Have you ever heard of like private cleanup companies soliciting to residents?
Yes.
That may not know this program.
Absolutely. We have it actually happen all the time. Once they kind of figure out that we're out there, they try and get them before we do. I can see why, and it happened mainly in the larger incidents, 2020 and then Campfire. Campfire, they had a lot of people going out and saying that they could do it quicker than we could do it, and you're going to be waiting forever. I a little biased to our program. I think we did a great job. We finished 1,100 properties in a year. That's a big deal. So I'm not sure anyone did it quicker. And I believe it was a year and a half after we left that they were still doing private programs. So yes, there are private companies that come out and say they'll do it for you. It is very expensive though.
Okay, so just in our public education, we can say you don't have to pay for this if you've qualified for the Cal Recycle program, unless you're very impatient.
I don't want to say impatient. If you have the money to do it, go do it. If you have the resources to do it, maybe you own a construction company and you have those resources. But I think some of the things that they need to take into consideration, I would say, would be how are you getting it to the landfill, and will any of the local landfills take it? Because oftentimes that is not the case. So really, I think a lot of education and talking them through the process of the steps. They need to understand that it's not just throwing it all in the back of a truck bed and taking it to your local dump.
Okay, yeah, that's great info. Thank you.
No problem. Just to follow up on the objectives, Cal Recycle is a state government agency working in coordination with many other state partners. We work really well with Cal OES, and we are mission tasked by Cal OES. So once we get that mission task from Cal OES, we have the contracting authority to contract out contractors that we already have pre-qualified, and we move on from there. I think I just covered who pays for this. Partnerships, so we're willing to make partners with anyone. I believe I talked to Marcia the first time on Friday, like close to 5 o'clock. And look, we're already partnering right here. So thank you for this opportunity. So I think moving forward, we're happy to do presentations like this. I think we've talked about doing road shows, but I think education is important, whether it be about the safety of survivors, safety of nonprofits, or just simply understanding that, you know, there's a face to the government name. Cal Recycle is well known for doing debris removal, but I oftentimes think we're kind of lumped in with FEMA, or we're lumped in with, you know, the big bad government. And I think if you knew our debris team, I'm extremely proud of them. And we're definitely the elite debris removal team around. So moving forward, partnerships, give us a call. We'll definitely have conversations.
I I think Jenny's got her hand up. Jenny?
Okay.
Hello, that was amazing. So helpful. Again, coming from LA, we would love to have someone like you be speaking to our VOAD and all of our partners. So you're awesome. Just to augment, and I guess reinforce the point that you had, and these will be very quick. Is the PPE requirements, the toxicity and landfill topic is real. And
Mhm.
so important to consider. The reason I say that, or the example I'm going to give, is Woolsey Fire. I mean, you showed the tonnage, right? This is a rhetorical question, but where did all that go, right? And what we're seeing now, 5.5 years later, is severe health issues relative to the disposal of that debris. And these are all lessons learned. We said early on, Araceli said it, we learn as we go and we correct for it, fall down, get up and be better for it. But it's just something that I want to reinforce because, like you said, Amber, I mean, people get, so emotional. At the same time, they're not thinking 6, 12, 18 months down the road and what the impact of not wearing appropriate PPE or just trying to do it themselves is. And then I've a couple questions, and you've kind of touched on things, but I just really wanted to bring it home and say to you, how do you see partner organizations helping with cleanup in California? Super, super important because we are so very, very different than many other national sites. What are the limitations and when can nonprofits come in? And could you give some examples where partners have assisted and or offset the impact of the cleanup to I'm reading my writing and I can't read it. That's sad. To available resources. So did that make sense, Amber?
Sure. So a lot of the nonprofit volunteers go through Cal OES. Since we are mission tasked through Cal OES, that's kind of why I know Zach. I started talking to Zach during floods. We're not super experienced in debris removal and floods yet. And I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we're a muck and gut type of debris removal organization. We're going to rely on our volunteers for a long time for that. We might get to the point where we do curbside pickup, and we're looking towards that. We're definitely trying to build the team towards that. But in regards to nonprofits, it's really something that goes through Cal OES and the fact that they've done this for a long time for many different types of incidents. Cal Recycle is really a contracting mechanism for contractors to come up and clean up debris removal. We don't do volunteers. We contract out contractors to get it done in a quick and efficient way. My OES hat, because I was there for 14 years, I really think getting information out as quick as possible. I see volunteers, if you get on the response part of this, you'll see doors open for you. You'll see where you guys fit in and where you can plug and play your organization. I know it's a competitive thing, but I also know that there's a need for it. And those local assistance centers, I remember the ones up in Campfire, they were handing out those sifters, and we're walking through thinking we are leading them into an unsafe environment. And so that's where we really need the messaging to start earlier for us in Cal Recycle, because we do have an elaborate safety team. So we really want to get in more on the response, not because we want the project or we want to do it. We don't make those decisions. We're completely fine knowing we don't make those decisions. We just want what's right for everyone and to understand that this is a public health emergency. And so I think I touched on your question. The one thing I'd like to say about Woolsey is Woolsey was a highly insured area. And so there were a lot of private cleanups, and the other part of education is making sure counties know what they need to require in their private cleanups. And that goes down to the safety of those employees as well. So some type of guidelines there and education there would be extremely helpful.
I don't know. I'll just comment and say thank you. Yes. And just for clarification, I don't know what the percentage, how you relate highly insured versus not highly insured, right? So what I can tell you is that we had over 500 cases of the 1,400 structures that burnt. that were uninsured or underinsured. So
So what I meant by insured was that they did it on their own. They went to the private program. They didn't come to our program, and that it didn't mean that insurance on our program doesn't matter. You can have insurance or not have insurance. But what I meant by that was the private cleanup and what the disposal of those materials needs to be as strict as our program or stricter.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, some of these things for the purpose of everybody hearing, the difference. It's semantics, right? And that's what happens out there with these misunderstandings in the communities and with our partners, and where the lines can be drawn, partners feeling like they can't help and are being asked to leave. That's not what they're being, I just want to make sure that we're really clear that collaboration is so, so welcome. And it's all about following the process to have the correct and appropriate outcome.
This also goes to the communities that we drive our trucks through. So we are very careful, and we call it burrito wrap, where we tarp all of our stuff and we make sure that it's all secure, that we're not just driving through communities and spreading the ash and debris. And so we really need to make sure that the private companies are doing that as well. And so that goes down to setting up a really good private company if you're going to allow people to do it themselves. So yeah. I think we covered questions, but if
Yeah,
there's
I
more,
think
I'd be
you
happy to
did.
answer them.
I think you did. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to our next support organization, Team Rubicon, and Susie Lyon.
Thanks, Marcia. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Team Rubicon is a veteran-led humanitarian organization, founded in 2010 after the Haiti earthquake. And we've been growing. We do a lot. We still do some international response, but our primary response is US and Canada at the current time. Volunteers throughout the US and Canada. Although we're veteran-led and veteran-founded, only about 50% of us nowadays are veterans, just because there aren't as many and we've got more volunteers, which is a good thing. Lots of first responders. We're taking the skills that we learned in the military doing firefighting, or that we learned out as a police officer or a firefighter, or just because we're that kind of volunteer, to do very specific niche response. Do a lot of hurricane response, do a lot of flooding response. And in California in particular, but mostly in the western part of the US, we've started to do a lot of mitigation. So Marcia, if you'll do the next slide.
That's not what I meant to do. There you go.
Gotta love PowerPoint. And we could not do this literally as well as we do it without crisis cleanup. So props to Aaron for that one. We'll come in depending on the size of the operation. It does not have to be huge. It can be small. But if we have access to those cases and that information, it's much easier for us to send out our volunteers. And to bring in the right volunteers, because frequently we'll bring volunteers in if the operation is big enough. And so we'll want to bring people trained in core operations instead of people trained in SAW work if we're looking at muck outs. And so having that information is super helpful. We do train our volunteers in how to muck out a house. We'll do that. I do want to be very specific on the removal part of the debris. We've gone back and forth on whether we do management or removal. We take the debris to the roadside. We'll get it out of the house. We will take out all that carpeting. We'll take out the drywall. We'll get it down ready for them to get rebuilt by whoever's going to do the rebuild. We don't have the trucks that Cal Recycle has or that the private contractors have. We will sort it if you want us to sort it. That will be a conversation with the county or with whoever is handling the operation. We do like to work with the county where we can, and in most cases, we're going to do that. But if it's a small thing, if it's a little weekend, hey, we've got to come out and do this one house here, we may be working with a nonprofit. We do very much like to partner with some of our similar nonprofits. The Southern Baptists and those folks have complementary capabilities. And so quite often in these bigger responses, Hurricane Ian in Florida, you'll find all of us down there. And again, crisis cleanup really helps us manage, okay, that one's yours, this one's ours, or hey, maybe we need to go work on this one together. And so having that information is super helpful. It does list sifting there. We do not sift after California wildfires. We've done it before, but we don't do it anymore, again, because of the PPE requirements and the health hazards that we're just not trained to deal with. But simple stuff, we do bring our own PPE for core operations. We have N95s, we have hard hats, eye protection, Tyvek suits. And so we can go in, it's not something the county has to provide. We do also train under the incident command system. We are, we'll go to FEMA trainings. And so we do have people who are trained in that. We would need to know, hey, you need somebody who could do EOC support, for example. Next slide. I mentioned that in the West Branch, we do a lot of mitigation. We've got a mitigation operation going on in Sacramento County, started Saturday along the American River Parkway, doing defensible space, doing fuel reduction. We have some people who are trained in home ignition zone assessments. We can do that. So again, this is pre-disaster. If we can get in there and make a difference ahead of time, it makes the disaster less, and we like that. So mitigation is a huge key capability for us. We've got some teams that have had the sandbagging training from the state, which I will make a plug for that because I know they're not here. Get the state water guys to come do sandbag training for you. It's eye-opening. There is a right way and a wrong way to sandbag, so it can make a difference. Particularly Jenny down in Southern California, we've got several teams down there that are really well trained in that. So if you need them, call ahead of time. Again, we can do the debris removal, that erosion control. That takes a little bit of planning ahead of time just because we need to get the right people in. Almost all of our people are volunteers. We have very small paid staff. So sometimes we'll have bodies and sometimes we won't, depending on how many crises we're trying to fight at the same time. But we do have local people here in Northern California is our geographic area team. We've been here for a while and we'd love to talk with you. And we love to collaborate with other organizations because it makes us much, much, much more effective. So that is Team Rubicon. Please feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions. I will put my email in the chat, and you can always go to teamrubiconusa.org if you want a little bit better description of what it is we do. Thank you, Marcia. Any questions?
Great. Thank you so much, Susie. I don't know why my computer's doing that. All right. Yeah, this is just, I want to follow up on everything that you're talking about. This is great. Red Cross was not able to be here today, but they did send me some information about disaster cleanup. They have actually a really nice website that talks about step-by-step for individuals on what to do to clean up. And it's a really good guide. It is broken up into categories, clothing and gear. So what should you be wearing to be safe? The cleaning supplies that you should have, the actual cleanup, what to do with water damage and what to do about smoke damage. And I'll just gonna show you a couple. So for the gear, it was, just pretty much exactly like what Cal Recycle suggested. And that, it amazes me how often I see people doing work where they are wearing tennis shoes or flip-flops, and you just, yeah, you have to think about the hazards that you're going to walk on when you're in this situation. And then the other is the cleaning supplies, which again is to try to get rid of debris and dirt and mold and other things on an individual basis. And thank you, Cindy, for putting that in the chat. It's also in the training library under the webinar, under this webinar. The link to that is there, so you can get all of it. They also sent me a few pictures of they do hand out cleanup kits. They don't do the cleanup, but they hand out the kits. And so you can see in this upper left picture, the buckets, the 5-gallon buckets, that's what they hand out. And it's got most of the supplies that were just listed on their list, with sponges and some bleach and mops and things. They do some, depending on what's being done, they hand out shovels and rakes as well. And so that's them, and they're at every event that they're supporting, doing that as well. I'm going to turn it over to Catholic Charities now, just to talk about a cleanup that we had recently that was just the specifics of food cleanup. And Araceli, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Marcia. So just wanted to talk about the recent storms that just happened in February. There was the city, and I mean, we were in many different conversations with city, county, and cadre as far as the communication, being prepared. But I think one thing that people didn't realize is unless you were without power for such a long time, people weren't aware of how many people were without power. We were getting notices, but sometimes when families don't know where to call or what to get support on, or even the simple things of, how long my fridge has been out, and getting that information. So moving forward, we actually got a call on Wednesday that a new charities housing facility was without power for 3 days, going on its 4th day. And it hadn't had its grand opening, so there was probably about 88 residents that were living there already. So they still had about 20 to 30 vacancies. We even had a person come in that day and was going to move in, had all her movers, but there was no power. There hadn't been a power for 3 days. So when the team was informed, everybody's that has been doing presentation has been talking about recovery and doing, the beginning to the long-term case management. We came in and we actually needed to get an assessment. We knew it was a senior complex, but we didn't know a lot about the seniors. And because when it was raining and stormy and so the power was off, it was extremely cold being in that building. My team here, you could see them. They had flashlights, they had lights. We brought flashlights, and we were door knocking, doing assessments to about 88 tenants on 3 floors. We worked with Marcia, we worked with the county, worked with the city to, help with the cleanup. Once the power did come back on, we had a lot of seniors that just moved in, and they had the population that lived there were all under 30% AMI. And also a lot of those families were the first time they actually had a place to call their own. They were previously unhoused. So any of their funds that they did put together to start living there, we all know how expensive it is to move into a new place. And and these families didn't have any other means. So even Martha's Kitchens came in and was providing meals in the dark. So when we did a maybe a 4-hour call out to volunteers, and we have a list of volunteers that we were able to call out to, and we needed runners. We needed runners to help clean out people's fridges, to do a lot of cleanup that even families were like, no, it's okay. I just bought that. I don't want to get rid of that. And so then we had a lot of our case managers going upstairs and talking to them about, yes, it has been some times that the power came on, but now, it did get defrosted. At what point do you throw out things? And being comfortable to talk to families about the simple power shut off for 3 days, medication, what is expired because it has been, with the meat that you defrosted, so we were doing some, if you see here on the left-hand side, we went in, we did an assessment. On the right-hand side, we were helping out with applications, with cleanup is also trying to get those families signed up for, reimbursement on anything that could possibly get reimbursed, whether it's from PG&E, for FEMA, signing up. Some people are not comfortable or tech savvy to be able to sign up for things. So we had different case managers in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese just to even help with that once the power did come back on. But we were ready to do everything, outside under canopies in the rain. But luckily we did have the power come back on. But then we had to, we partnered up with Second Harvest. And there was a couple different organizations that donated butter, milk. Second Harvest provided a lot of their perishables that they provide, and we were able to go and deliver. They had a lot of families had small fridges, so they would only take whatever. We were doing a market style in front of their doors and seeing what they wanted, what they could take, and they didn't want food to go to waste. But it was really hard. I think with the seniors that we were working with was trying to do the cleanup when people didn't want to throw away things. We've talked about fires and we talked about larger disasters, but when a power outage for this population happens and their means aren't extra funds on a monthly basis, how can we get them that support? And so sometimes that cleanup is having volunteers just doing a quick check-in. We've been going back to this site now, and we've been doing emergency preparedness. We've been doing some workshops. We've been trying to do some gift cards, just trying to they had another power outage, but this one was planned last week. And we went and had bingo. We had an emergency bingo game going on with everybody and just engaging them and talking to them. And a lot of them came down and were happy that we were able to bring coffee and had an emergency bingo game going on with them. And we're still connecting with them. So now they're wanting more games coming out. So part of the cleanup could be, part of that energy is trying to bring, no matter what the disaster can be, is trying to bring that compassion to knowing the situation and the population you're working with. I heard somebody had mentioned earlier, cleaning up, finding urns, we're all talking about the same common, what is more valuable to that person, and how can we make sure that whether it's food or having a full fridge is that security for that person. How can we make them feel comfortable to understand the safety of moving forward and doing, whether it's cleaning out fridges, dumping out trash, doing what we should clean, what we can't clean. We had a couple of teenagers that came out and they said, we'll be the runners, because a couple of people said, well, we brought my mom groceries, but I can't go up the stairs. So they were just helping provide all of that. And then what we, getting that communication. When you're in a place where you could have communication via text, via email, via whatever the system could be, works wonderful. But lesson learned from this power shutoff is because of the building structure, phones weren't even working inside. So no phones, no light, senior, vulnerable population, and it's still raining. Part of that cleanup was is doing wellness checks as well. So we've been able to, PG&Es, we're still working with PG&E. Here it is. Where are we? Almost in May. We're trying to get PG&E information because we're trying to be that advocate for them. As they have, sign up here if you were affected by power shut off. Well, all of them got denied. So now we're working with PG&E and trying to see about what other avenues can they help, because they all got information that they could qualify for some things, and now we're finding out that they can't. And then the messaging, the good thing is we have been going back and doing some case management for some clients, so they like that part. And building that relationship when you're first coming in, doing the cleanup and sharing that communication. I know here in Cadre, we try to be on the same page, and hey, we'll call them, hey, Marcia, we've done this, we've done that. Let's see who else wants to partner up, who can communicate. So then that way, whenever the next person is coming in, that person is not having to retell their story. And then they feel comfortable that, oh, we worked together, they came together and they're helping us together. Any question?
Araceli, what was your process to actually clean out the refrigerators?
So we did a mass email to our volunteers, and we actually met everybody downstairs. We had checked in prior to the actual cleanup. We had checked into each floor, so we were able to get a printout of everybody that was in the apartment complex. And then we did a wellness check on every single person. And we had everything was paper documented, unfortunately, because there was no Wi-Fi at that time. Everything was paper documented, so we knew who was on medications, who needed their fridges being cleaned out, who was home, who was not home. So because we were at the entrance level, then we would do a buddy system. So when we were going up to a buddy system, we would still have them take all the trash bags. And then the apartments complex, they opened up the trash cans, and then the city also did an extra pickup of all the garbage that same day, because of the fact that we emptied out almost everybody's fridge. So then we would do a buddy system. They would go up. We provided the same information to each client. We gave them a trash bag if they weren't comfortable, and we also did, the PPEs for gloves. We had everybody wear mask, and then we cleaned it out and still gave them extra. So we left it there in case a person, later on wasn't comfortable about throwing something else. We would have them just get it, and in case they weren't able to take it downstairs, the management the next day was going to do another sweep, and we let them know that the management was going to come around, do a sweep, and housekeeping was going to go ahead and dump all of that out.
And did you have to spray down the inside of the refrigerators?
Yeah, we did do the Clorox spray. We sprayed everything down. Again, some families were very resistant, so we did have to do a couple of case managers. We did have to. One thing that was really good, Marcia, is the property manager that oversaw this site knew that there was several clients that had anxiety and had different challenges that needed more assistance. So we actually had the more experienced case managers, and I even went with one of my case manager to do an assessment while we were doing that. and then just kind of filling because we can't just go into, okay, regular cleanup, let's do this, let's do that. Because of the situation, we did have to do an evaluation on for the safety of our volunteers, safety of our staff as well, just to see and feel the connections with each client.
Araceli, was this a Catholic Charities property?
It's a charities housing
Okay,
property.
thank
So
you.
charities housing is an arm. It's just like the Diocese of San Jose. It's an arm of Catholic Charities. We provide services there, but it's not part of Catholic Charities.
So would you have provided the same kind of support to an apartment that, or a complex that was not an arm of Catholic Charities?
Yes, so we would have. I know sometimes because of the person called our CFO, that's how come we knew about it and were asked to help support. But yes, anybody that needs some support, one thing that we would have done is just like how they did it before, is they called us and then I called Marcia and let Marcia know about what's going on. And then because at the end of the day, once they notify me, yes, they're notifying Catholic Charities, but I'm also part of Cadre. So then I talked to Marcia and we were in side-by-side conversations throughout the way, because if we weren't able to provide services, we would definitely reach out to see who can.
Thanks. And I do think just the takeaways from this is the education. So if there are potential power outages, we need to be on top of that, telling people about their food. There are food safety links on Cadre's website on, how long can something stay unrefrigerated and what do you do with your medications if they haven't been refrigerated. And then the mental health aspect, I think anytime that our cleanup groups are going out and interacting with the public, if you see people that are struggling with anxiety or other mental stress, to let Cadre know as well, so that we can get the mental health community involved and see if there's any additional support that could be given there. So this great lesson learned for just a little cleanup event, just 88.
Just 88, it all, but one thing I can say is we found out at 6 in the morning when I got a call. I got my team at site by 8. We had intakes, intakes on phones, intakes on paper. We were ready within an hour and a half. The team now wants to beat that record.
That's awesome. Thank you, Araceli.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Minjing Se, who is the Deputy Executive Director of the Tzu Chi Foundation, who helps all over the place, and they're in Taiwan right now, and just an amazing organization. And Minjing, I'll just let you, if you want me to forward the slides, but you just want to share the video, or?
Yeah, can I use my screen?
Yes.
Share my screen?
Yes.
That's good.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you, Marcia. This is Minjin Xie. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Tzu Chi Foundation. I think, well, we know each other, many people, for quite some time. And of course, always some new people that we love to recognize, to know. We just had a family safety expo on the past Sunday. Thank you, Marcia, for coming and give our support. Tzu Chi has been in disaster, a lot of major disaster response effort in the past. And then we gradually try to extend our support into the long-term recovery. And then recently, in the past year, we were able to also try to be involved with the cleanup and learn that portion. So today, let me share just some of our experience as a volunteer organization. We are not a professional cleanup team, but we do have very good heart volunteers, and I think it's very inspirational. So and so last year, March 23rd, last year, we all know Pajaro had a big flood. The Pajaro River levee broke in early morning, March 11. Pajaro is right across from Watsonville, down in Santa Cruz County. And so as our volunteers were able to go to the Pajaro River and did the on-site assessment. And we are very good at giving out emergency, especially emergency material like blanket. So when we're there, we did assessment and gave out the blanket to a lot of survivors on the riverbank. And then, so that's March 12th, the second day. And then in 2 weeks, we decided because the flood last year was so widespread, and it's hard to know exactly the overall situation. So we decided to go door by door and do assessment door by door. And because of that opportunity, we got to see the situation in a lot of communities. The team decided that we want to focus on the mobile home community. That's a more an area that needs more help. And then 2 days later, we actually indeed went to this mobile home park. One of the service that Tsuji has been providing is we thought financial assistance is very easy for the survivors to use for whatever needs they need, for whatever they need. So we did the financial assistance in the mobile home park. And because of that, we were able to look at the community in more details. There are a lot of senior, low-income families, and they echo and they voice that indeed the cleanup is a headache for these communities. So it's during that distribution when our volunteers see the situation, they expressed very strong wishes to help the community clean up, even though we didn't have much experience before. And a week later, we appreciate so much HCRN, the Hope Crisis Response Network. They help us to organize the cleanup project, particularly for this mobile home park. It is a lot of effort to coordinate, and we were able to mobilize a team in a week. That's pretty fast, as they're saying, mobilizing compassion in times of great need across partners. So that's April 22nd, and April 22nd happened to be the Earth Day. What a great day to celebrate Earth Day. So a platoon of infantry, indeed, those volunteers are so happy to come here. They show up, and most volunteers actually are Silicon Valley engineers, and they are doing this first time. And it's very physical demanding, especially we all dressed in the cover all protective suites. Volunteers actually work very, very hard. But it's very rewarding. I think it will be interesting to see, just to see a short video clip of volunteers working. We try to clean up the under the mobile home the unit, or the mud, shovel, and so that's the in the mobile home park. And then we also help clean up this house on the railroad road. Yeah, and these are the on the side there are the construction crew trying to do their more heavy duty job. So this is after cleanup. Again, a lot of fun. So yeah, I want to show this just to let you know that indeed the volunteers. It's first time for a lot of them. So you know, who can do a cleanup? A lot of people say, well, cleanup is really not for everyone. But this young man Samuel, he said, I never knew I can do this. Next time, let me know earlier next time. And another volunteer, age 70. It's hard, it's tiring, but I'm very happy I came this time. So this 30-day become a happy day for a lot of volunteers. The key learning, I think, you know, it's really a 30-day, but it's a happy day. Volunteers were motivated when they were able to see and feel the survivors' sufferings, and their need. When they see that, they are inspired. They want to do it. Coordination of locations, manpower is very challenging, and I'm happy to hear today's crisis cleanup has such a great platform, so that would help coordination a lot. Again, connection and recruiting through community or faith-based organization like us can be very helpful. The other thing is because of the trust and the communication protocols established ahead of time, that you know, that would help a lot. Very often time either the survivors or between the agencies, if we don't have enough trust, things cannot happen. Safety and care really appreciated by a lot of volunteers, and we know it's important, and we always show our care to volunteers. HCRN did the same thing, and that's how volunteers feel very happy to work on this kind of project. Also, the team spirit that creates the sense of for volunteers to have the sense of belonging and supporting. That is also very helpful. So again, we are not a professional cleanup agency like Team Rubicon or the other agencies, but when our volunteers are motivated, when our volunteers were able to join, I think they really can do great job. And I would hope the experience we have can inspire more other community-based organizations, volunteers, to join this kind of cleanup. I think that's a very short sharing from my end, and I really hope we can contribute more besides giving out blankets, besides giving out financial assistance, I think the volunteers will be very happy to be engaged in person with the cleanup mission. All right, thank you. Let me stop my share.
Yes, thank you, Minjing. That's
you.
I'm gonna find my screen again. All right, yeah, I think that there will be an outpouring of people wanting to help in a disaster. And let me get myself back on screen. It's good for everyone's mental health. Instead of just watching and feeling helpless, you get involved and you feel hopeful and you feel like you contributed, and that we all need to do that so that we can continue to build that resilience in our community, that we're all here to help each other and try to eliminate as many obstacles as possible to doing that. So as we're wrapping up here, it's almost 12. I just wanted to remind you that on the Cadre website under preparedness, you can click there and go to all of the preparedness information. Like I said, there's some on food safety, but there's also information on this webinar. So the PowerPoint will be there, and the resources that were shared. I broke out some of Cal Recycle's information into separate documents because it just looked like it was something that would be good for planning in the future. And so I just broke it out in case you just want a piece of it. And when the webinar ends, a survey will pop up on your screen. It's like 5 questions. It'll take about 20 seconds. So if you could please just answer those quickly, would appreciate that. And then I already accidentally put these up in the chat, but I wanted you to know that we have a bunch of other trainings coming up in the next few days and weeks. And so I put them again, the links in the chat if you want to look at more information on any of these topics, because there's a description at the links. And does anyone else have anything they want to share? No, thank you to all our presenters. This was great information. Very happy that now we have this documented, then we can provide more education to more people to keep the community safe and to keep us all safe. And with that, I think we're done.